Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back to another New Year's Indie Book Blitz panel. We have been going ever since Friday of last week. This is now panel number 27 of the panels we have done with indie authors to ring in the new year. And this one is part two of the genre that has my heart, because of course this is my genre. This is dark, epic fantasy. So it's so good to have you all here and joining. We have Lucy on, we have Gregory on, we have Kareem on, we have Mars on. Thank you all so much for hopping on today. Some of you have been on, but some of you, this is the first time.
Oh God, who talks?
Thanks for having us.
Are we allowed to? Yeah.
Yeah.
We're just hot podging it.
Yeah, what we're gonna do is just go around. If everybody wants to introduce yourself, what kind of books you write, tell us maybe a book or a series you're known for. Lucy, you can kick us off, and we'll just sort of go around the circle.
Thank you. Hi, so I'm Lucy A. McLaren. So my debut book came out in 2022. It's called Awakening, The Commune's Curse, Book One. Came out from a small press called Santa Fe Writers Project. And yeah, so I write, I describe myself as writing stories that are about the light of human connection in dark, oppressive society. So I like exploring, like this series has like an authoritarian government, as you know, the big bad. I'm currently querying a series that is inspired by Jack the Ripper and Victorian London, but has like evil god who's controlling the serial killer kind of things. And exploring kind of religious issues and patriarchal issues. So I like kind of exploring that kind of stuff in a fantasy setting. Yeah, and I love reading dark fantasy books. I don't know what it says about me, but I really prefer books that do not have a happy ending, and I don't know why, but that's what I like reading. That's what I like writing.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to have you on and someone else. I like reading sometimes happy endings, but I like writing bittersweet endings and reading a lot of those. I think reading Lord of the Rings ruined me for life. It's like, well, it's happy for some and bittersweet happy tears for others. And yeah, we've got people on both Twitter and YouTube. So as we're going through, before I forget, all of these authors' links are in the description box on the YouTube version. So you can just go down, check out their books, check out their author sites. And if you have questions for the authors about them, about their books, about writing, about why we would write dark fantasy, you can drop them in the comments and I will pull those over after we do our introductions as well. Gregory, so nice to meet you. So nice to have you
Hi.
on.
Hello. It's nice to be here, actually. As anxious as I am, I express it as like being happy, so that's really great. So I can lie to everyone.
Introvert
I mean,
tonight.
So actually, it's funny. Everyone joined, and I saw all these like very professional names, and I just typed in Gregory. So I was like, "Oh, I should probably like fix that." So hi everyone, I'm Gregory Wonderland. That is my actual name. It's just made to be fantasy. I too am a big fan of the darkness. Honestly, it's kind of like I've tried to write happy things, but it's not in my nature, so it ends up just being kind of dark at the end. Russian Jew, so like it's part of it, right? It's like our existence in there, so you can't avoid it at that point. I have one novel out right now. It was actually just published last year in late October, so I am brand spanking new to this. So please feel free to tell me to shut up at any point. My single book out right now is called The Soul of Chaos, which is kind of like it's definitely dark. I mean, there's a torture scene; it gets dark, but it's more. It tries to blend the line between epic fantasy and dark, and it's got its little rays of hope. But let's be honest, all dark fantasy kind of has that in it, right? Like it wouldn't be. You really wouldn't want to read about it if it was just like, and then they died. And you're like, great, cool, fun, thanks. But yeah, I don't want to spend too much time with that. But I have I'm with a small press called Black Rose Writing, which is phenomenal because self-publishing would destroy my soul. I can't do anything that's not creative. I'm so bad at it. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell. So let's keep this going.
Well, congrats on your newest book.
Thank you so much.
I love that you bring up, the fact that there's two aspects to being indie. So there are the indie presses that help you put your book out and help coordinate that stuff for you, not to be confused with the vanity presses that charge you $15,000 to publish one book. But then there's also the indie where you coordinate everything on your own. And the whole Blitz, we've had a mix of people from all those different ranges. So it's been good to see, different perspectives and different ways of getting here.
I have nothing but respect for people who can self-publish all on their own, because that is a nightmare of work ethic that I do not simply possess. So
Yeah, if you know an indie author you love and you're watching, send them a note. They'll always appreciate it. Thank you.
review their book with a 5-star. I would love that. Sorry, I'll shut up now, please.
Kareem, welcome back. You were on earlier this year with the Spiffbo panels, the self-published fantasy blog off panels. So
Yeah,
it's good to have you back.
Yeah, it's good to be back with you, Catherine. Really appreciate the effort that you have been like. I have like 15 panels so far. That's too much effort for someone who pretends that she's an introvert. So yeah, chapeau for that. I'm Karim Suleiman. I started my writing journey from what Grigori and actually Lucy have been right now. Lucy's in the querying phase, and Grigori is published with a small press. This is actually how I started. Like how many years? Like 5 years ago or 6 years ago.
Many.
Yeah, and I spent like a whole year of querying. The closest thing that I reached was like getting 2 full requests. That was my closest thing. So really, I wish you best of luck, Lucy. It's a marathon. Don't give up. My thoughts and prayers and everything. And then I tried my luck with a small press. They were amazing guys. I had a very cool cover. Editing was really nice. But the thing that lacked was the marketing and the advertising. It wasn't, the best thing. So in terms of sales, it wasn't the best thing ever. And that's when I switched to self-publishing. And I tell you what, I made in my first month what I have been, earned for a whole year with a small press. I'm not saying that this should be the case with Grigori or anybody. Everybody has their different journey. So I know guys who are working with small press, and it's working very, very nice with them. So I have, unfortunately, I'm out of town, so I don't have any books with me right now. So I guess you'll have to Google. I have to do some effort to find my books now. I am author of 2 epic fantasy series, The Tales of Grania and War of the Last Day. War of the Last Day, the first book in it was Army of the Cursed. It's the one that was Spiffbo semi-finalist like a couple of years ago. And I guess it's the one that I'm most renowned for. The best thing that I remember that described my books, that my books reminded them of Game of Thrones, except that my characters live a little bit longer. I didn't know if this was a compliment. This was a complaint or something. So I made
compliment. We appreciate it. Sorry.
But I worked on that on my latest book, and I think I missed it. I missed the whole thing around. I think there was so much blood. So actually, this is me in a nutshell, and I'm good to be back here with you, Katherine, all of you guys.
Yeah, it's so good to have you back. And yeah, they just saved all the hard part for you. It's like, oh, yes. Not that the finding editors and stuff that are legit is not hard, especially the first time. But it's like once you know what you're doing, that part's not so bad. But the marketing just never gets better. It's always the same.
Marketing is always the headache. Finding a cover and editor is not an issue now. But marketing is a really headache, and it never gets easier. There are things that used to work for me like 5 years ago, but now it is not. Hi, Bo. We know you, guy. We know you.
We love you, Bo.
We love you, guy. So the marketing scene is always changing. With Amazon, it's never the same. It's always changing their algorithm. So. It's really a nightmare, as Grigori has described it, and we hope for the best,
Yep. And Mars, so good to have you on. Thank you for joining us. Where do you fall in all this dark light stuff?
Mine is a kind of very particular journey. I got like a lot of success in my first attempt to query. I got picked up by one of the biggest 2 publishers in the world, and then I signed the contract and everything, and it ended up falling through because of some changes in editorial. So after that, I kind of got like super depressed, and I kept writing, but I didn't I didn't keep querying or anything. I said, okay, I'm gonna do my own thing. I'm gonna keep writing, and then at some point I will self-publish, because I think that's the way for me. If I got burned by the one of the biggest publishers, what am I gonna do again? So last year, after like 5 or 6 years of just writing on and off, because I have kids, so it gets difficult with kids along. I ended up publishing some of the books that I had been working on. I published a standalone sci-fi novel, and then I'm right now, like in 10 days, I'm publishing the third book of a trilogy. That's this one. Luckily, I have my books with me. The first one, I have some blur on, but the first one is called Thralls of the Tyrant God, and the second one is Pawns of the Cruel God, and the third one is coming up in about 10 days. So I'm running to get to it, because I said last year, I said, okay, the only way I'm gonna do this is if I set some really hard deadlines for myself. So I set up the Amazon pre-orders, like, okay, in 6 months I'm gonna publish this book, and 6 months later the next one. And then
Yeah.
I kind of tortured myself a little bit, but I'm actually gonna make it. So I think that's it ended up working well. But I was just like one family sickness or something like that away from missing those deadlines. So my journey is a little bit different. I ended up going through to self-publishing, because I said, okay, I'm not an expert, but I do know a couple of things about marketing from my day job, and I've been writing for a long time. Even if I haven't been publishing, I know what I'm doing, and I kind of had confidence in that. And I have like 10 books at different stages of finished, almost finished, all that. So I kind of trusted that I could, you know, the writing part would not be a problem, and that I could find out a lot about the self-publishing. I had been following for years, people like David Gogran and Sean Penn and all them, and I kind of knew a lot of things, but I still found out like something that I should have done differently in terms of the time between releases, working with beta readers, ARC readers, all that. I kind of messed up my timelines a little bit, so I could have done things a little bit more organized if I hadn't set some tough deadline for me to reach, right? But yeah, that was kind of my journey, and now I'm gonna now that I have I achieved some rhythm, and I've had some success in terms of getting good reviews and some confidence boosting from that. I'm gonna keep writing and keep churning out books, at least one or two a year, because I'm a fast writer, and I have like 10 years roadmap of the books I want to write. It's just that I had to kind of motivate myself to put them out there, not just to write and finish, but put them out there, and not and convincing myself that, hey, going the long way or the querying phase didn't work for me, because I needed kind of the confidence boost of getting it out there and having people react to that. Otherwise, I would just wallow self pity while querying, and that doesn't work for me at this stage. I'm already 40 years old. I said, okay, it's now or never, right? When am I gonna do it? When I'm 65? I could do it, but probably will not have the same level of energy to do that. Right?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's so good to meet all of you, to have you all on. I'm sorry if there's a little bit of lag in my video, because my internet has just been like struggling to keep up with everything. But I'm also a dark fantasy author, as I said at the beginning. If you've been watching the Blitz, I haven't talked a lot about my books, because there have only been 2 dark fantasy panels. This is number 2. I guess I'm most known for Splitting Dawn, which might pop up here, since that's the one that hit the USA Today bestseller list in the Realm of Darkness set last year.
Hell yeah!
And it's a full-length novel. But the one that's close to my heart is The Vow That Twisted Fate, which is a standalone debut epic fantasy with just a romantic side plot, as opposed to Splitting Dawn, which had a little more romance to it. So elves and dwarves and all of that aspect. And I think one of the things I love in my writing is that I feel like all my characters have to accept the fact that there's evil in everybody. And until you can accept that there's evil in all of us, you can't overcome or grow as a person, which is just sort of a personal theme. I don't think I ever set out intending for that to be a recurring theme in my books, but here it is. So The Violet Twisted Fate, I think, encompasses that best because it's about a world where all the evil was banished 500 years before, and now the sorceress who was banished has found a way to come back, but time flew differently. So all that's left on the world that she was banished from is innocent, naive people who are not ready to fight a big, evil, trained army. And so the main character has to try to stop this from happening. And really what she goes through discovering who decides what's evil and not. And so that sort of theming there. So I'm curious to hear, because we've had a couple Noble Bright fantasy panels, and then we've also had another dark fantasy panel, where you guys feel like the lines are drawn between Noble Bright, dark, and grim dark, and why you decided to put your book where you did on that spectrum. And whoever wants to take it first can take it, and we'll give everybody a chance to answer.
I think like there's the lines are so faded, right? Like it's very difficult to have like a hard defining factor of like, well, this is noble and this is dark and this is grim dark, and you're like, because I think most of us base it on feeling, right? Like just how it feels, especially with genre being such a nightmare to kind of determine. Like people will write young characters and then they'll be thrown into young adult books, and you're like, no, Ellen Hopkins is not a young adult writer. Come on, let's be honest. That's way too adult themed for that. So like it's really hard to say that. But if I had to say, when you describe like dark fantasy in general, it's this sense of hopelessness that really kind of pervades the plot, the characters, whatever it might be, where there are times where you deal with like really dark features in that storyline. I mean, we see it in, I would even say that Lord of the Rings qualifies as dark fantasy because, yeah, there's these trends of hope throughout the entire book, but the entire time, like, look at Frodo. I mean, this dude is literally having his soul drained as he's walking across the world, and you get all these characters that are just kind of trying to deal with the mortality in the world around them. And so that's kind of the huge delineating factor, right? Noble Bright really reminds me as that. It's more along the lines of, yeah, there's like this evil and they're going against like the whatever is happening in their world, but there's always a feeling of potential victory or like hope within the characters, and they kind of always come out ahead, which is a lot more, I think, culturally heavy in, say, United States, where most of our movies, like Marvel movies, right, there's always a theme of like, we're gonna win, but in dark fantasy there's a theme of, oh, we're definitely gonna die at any given point, where you get into these situations where things are heartless, things are tough, they're difficult, they're hard to deal with. I know in my own, so in Soul of Chaos, a lot of the characters deal with a lot of mental health issues. Both of the main characters struggle with very intense depression that they have to somehow motivate their way through. One of the characters is an addict, so she has a lot of issues with alcohol, which you get throughout the entire thing, and it seriously screws up her ability to like function in the world that she's supposed to deal with. So like that's something I don't think you would really see in as far as those goes. Like yeah, that's it. That's what I would say. If you need an example, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, definitely dark as far as romance goes, right? It's probably one of the darker, more romance things you can get into. So that's what I would say would be my kind of take on that in general.
I think no one really knows. Sorry, I think we are all kind of operating on that kind of spectrum. And when I started this trilogy, Grimdark wasn't even like labeled because I started writing it like 5 or 6 years ago. And then when I had to kind of place it in some category, I said, okay, yeah, this is actually closest to Grimdark, but it's also epic. Some of my readers have said, hey, it's like a Grimdark Sanderson, or like a mix of Steven Eriksson's Malazan and Sanderson's Stormlight Archive. So because it has that kind of, it's like if you took a very epic world and turned it, hey, 90 degrees to the darkest way you could turn it up, and then it starts getting a little more hopeful, as Gregory said. It starts getting more into an epic feel. At first it's hopeless, and then as the story progresses, you say, okay, these people might make it out alive. I see how that could happen, but I think it's these are all mostly marketing terms because, as Mary said, the Lord of the Rings could be dark fantasy if you consider it like that, or Harry Potter with the Dementors and all that. It's really dark at some points. So I don't think it's that helpful, except for not helpful for the writer, but I think it's helpful for the reader to see, okay, this is the shelf that I want to take a look at. So that's why we need to kind of find the way not to mislead the reader. But I think it's a very broad spectrum, and I think from grim dark to epic, I think there's a lot of degrees, for example. Um, and if you take a look at other movies like the Never-Ending Story, or Labyrinth, old 80s movies. Those were very dark fantasies. If you think about dark fantasy, it's kind of like that. It's like taking like the epic journey and turning like really hopeless at some points, or with a very dark twist, or anti-villain or something like that. So that's what I think about it. But I don't think I have it kind of set in stone. And I hadn't even heard of Noble Bright until a couple of weeks ago. What's that? We're kind of making up new categories every day.
I think about the first part, Gregoria and Mark did covered it a little very greatly, but about the lines between those subgenres. About the second part of the question, that what makes me decide which genre. If I'm speaking about myself, I don't think that I was aware of what I have a preset mind that, hey, I'm going to write a grim dark, or I'm going to write. I think this happens, naturally when you write, because writing is like you are expressing. It may be some feelings, some thoughts, a reflection of what is going around you in your world or in personal life. It's a way of expressing yourself, like art, like painting, like anything. So speaking of myself, I was thinking that I was writing heroic fantasy when I started, but I started to notice in my reviews that people that are describing my fantasy, especially my later books, that it's on the darker side, it's fairly grim. And I don't know, maybe I'm reflecting now that my death toll starts to, gets bigger with every book, and the hopes, the odds are getting harder, and the hopes are darker. Even the lighting in my house right now. So I don't know, maybe this is about something, about what I'm going through right now. This is maybe about around the world. I'm from the Middle East. We have a very rich history and a very uncertain future. So I'm present. So I'm just maybe I'm just reflecting from what is happening right now. So to answer the second part of the question, I don't think that I was deciding, let's write something dark. I was just writing fantasy, epic fantasy, something that I love. And it turns out darker than my shirt. That was not intentional.
But that's art, right? Sorry, it's just writing is art. It comes out in the form of the expression. I love that point, by the way. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, I think I'm the same, Kareem, actually, in terms of didn't go into writing thinking I'm going to write dark fantasy, but I think I feel like I enjoy characters and the stories of characters' mental health as well, because I'm a counsellor in real life. So I'm very interested in trauma, childhood experiences, and how they impact on people and who they grow up to be. So in writing the stories of my characters, it turned out that they're a bit messed up and a bit traumatized, and also in exploring real life issues, because the world has been, I don't know if I can swear, the world's been messed up, shall we say, for the past few years at least. Of course, longer than that, but there's been quite an intense period of time with a lot of stuff going on. And for me, exploring certain political things that have been happening in my country as well as other countries, and looking at kind of trauma around that, it is inherently dark in a way. But I think it also comes into the fact that, like Katherine, you said earlier, like everyone has a darker side to them. So it's important to me to have characters that aren't just these are the good guys and these are the bad guys. There's a blurred line. I think there's a bit of a popular kind of idea of what a morally grey character looks like, and whenever I read, I've read a lot of bad morally grey characters in terms of like people don't seem to understand what a morally grey person is. But I just think it's to be morally grey is to be very human, actually. Everyone's morally grey, really. And yeah, I find those the most interesting stories. I don't find it interesting reading about perfect heroes who can just go and kill the bad guys and that's it. Everyone's happy and it's all wrapped up neatly with a bow, because that's not how life operates, in my opinion. So I don't find those stories appealing. I want to read about stuff that helps to process my experiences and perhaps the experiences of people around me that I haven't been through personally, but that I would like to know more about.
Lucy, can we be friends? I love like
sure.
Sorry, I just like the morally gray thing. Is like so many people see it and they're like, yeah, they make bad decisions. They're bad people. That's morally gray. No, those are bad people.
Yeah,
like,
they're just dicks.
Right. Yeah, that's it. They're just dicks. There's so many, like, it is human to be morally gray. Like, we have to make those decisions every single freaking day, man. Like, can we curse on here? Because I don't think we can. It's probably a bad idea.
Oh yeah, right? It's fine. This is not labeled as a children's video. So.
Oh, thank fuck. Okay, all right, because it'll just happen.
This is the dark fantasy panel. This is not the middle grade fantasy panel.
Yeah, like it's like, come on, expect a little bit more, I think. But yeah, like that humanity is so great. And we have people from all over the perspective here, especially you, Kareem, like being in the Middle East right now. You're like that, because especially being like, so I'm Jewish, right? I have a family all over the place. And a lot of Americans will come up to me and be like, so what do you think about Israel? I'm like, I don't know, dude. Like, but it's one of those things where like, yeah, that experience is so colored, and I think we're all so set in that dark kind of overarching geopolitical scale, and to embrace that and like recognize that humans aren't naturally one way or the other, or kind of just neutral in our decision making is really cool. So I just appreciate that.
Yeah. So we've got a question from Jim, which is, what is everybody reading?
Hi, Jim.
Okay, so currently I'm reading.
How are you keeping your? Oh, sorry. More importantly, how are you keeping your author voice unique while you read other people's work?
I think you were starting to talk, Kareem.
Okay, so what am I reading right now? I just finished the Dance with Dragons of Game of Thrones. It was, I feel it's like an achievement, when you realize it. So I've read like 440,000. I should add this to my, author's bio. I finished Game of Thrones,
I was about to say, bless you, sir. Like, congratulations.
Congratulations, yeah. And started the Last Ranger by Jose. It's currently a finalist. I'm loving it. It's really really nice. It's like hits all everything I like. So I'm enjoying it so far.
On my end, since this year I have been writing like every free second that I had. I've been reading a lot less. And I didn't want to, like you mentioned, Kat, I didn't want to kind of get myself contaminated by similar books. So I bought a lot of indie books in my genre, and I have them on my Kindle to kind of now over my vacations, and once I finish this third book, to kind of get up to speed with what the other authors in the indie scene are doing. So I've tried not to get contaminated. So I've been reading, comic books, manga, stuff that still kind of feeds your imagination, but it's not the same kind of medium or the same kind of genre. So I don't get like that type of contamination. But I have Nicholas Eames' Kings of the Wild, just waiting for me in a couple of days when I finish mine. And I have been listening. Yeah. I think I'm gonna like that one, and I'm listening to an awesome Lord of the Rings audiobook. So kind of not reading; it's cheating. It's audiobook, but it still influences you a little because you start writing some kind of archaic sentence like Tolkien uses a lot of that. I love that. I kind of mix in my books kind of like some modern like type of past dialogue and all that. but I still use in some descriptions, or I have sometimes my characters, using kind of more archaic dialogue just because I enjoy it and if it makes sense with the story. In this case, I kind of built up the world so it made sense for people to kind of talk in both ways, kind of in a high speech and also in kind of a low speech. So I could use both because otherwise I kind of get bored with just like low speech, or and it gets boring if you're always using like high, archaic speech. It's like talking. That's that masterful. He has the hobbits talking in a very commoner way, and he has then Aragorn or Gandalf talking in very high speech, and that contrast, I think it's very interesting to me. So I try not to get, too carried away by what I read while I'm writing, but I always kind of go back to the things that I know that they're already influencing me anyway because I've read it a million times. It's not gonna change too much my style, right?
Yeah, is that the Andy Serkis narrative version that you're listening to?
No, I'm actually listening to one that is not an official one, done by a guy called Phil Dragash that incorporates all the music and score from the movies, and it's awesome.
Mm.
It's really awesome, and the guy should get like an Oscar and should get money for what he did. Sadly, because of copyright issues, yes, but it's an awesome one.
Tell you what, though,
Yeah.
if Andy Serkis narrates anything, I'll listen to it. That man.
Wasn't
can narrate
Andy
anything.
Serkis going to narrate? Maybe I'm.
Yeah,
Or was that just
I'll
the one
listen to him
he
for
did?
anything, though. Like,
I know he did that fundraiser where he read through The Hobbit live, and I was like,
yeah,
wow.
yeah. I think he did. He did the Lord of the Rings. I don't know if he did that one, but I think there's a Silmarillion too by him.
Lucy, what you reading these days?
So my TBR pile is just ridiculous at this point. Like honestly, it's ugh. So I was like, I know I'm going to read like 2 books at once and I'll get through it quicker. But actually, I'm just reading the books half the speed. The maths wasn't right in my head there. But anyway, I'm reading Bitterthorn by Kat Dunn, which is like a gothic fantasy romance. I don't usually go in for romance, but I'm into gothic stuff at the moment because I was writing my Jack the Ripper Victorian London, which is kind of gothic-y. I was like, I want horror, I want gothic stuff. So yeah, that's good so far. I've not long started that. And I'm also reading something called Lumi's Spell, which is by Yulana Dabbs, which is who's a lovely indie author that I've met. And it's kind of like a Viking inspired fantasy. And yeah, really good. I highly recommend it. Yeah, and are we answering the second question yet, or shall I let?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, in terms of letting your author voice, I think that number one, it takes time to develop that. So just write as much as possible. And I think perhaps it's the acknowledging the fact that you are kind of going to naturally absorb like the authors that you love. Like, for example, I love Robin Hobb, so I kind of, part of me would love to be able to write like her, but in my own way. So I think it's maybe getting out your head a little bit in terms of there probably will be similarities to other author voices, but if you write what you love, just read broadly, read as many authors as possible, keep writing and enjoy what you're writing. I think that's the main thing. Don't try and kind of emulate anyone or write because a particular topic is popular. Just write the things that you want to write, and I think that's how you find your voice.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, as far as voice goes, like we're all the product of what we've consumed, right, and what we've experienced. So there's no way you're going to be completely unique. I think I would be amazed to find a 100% unique anything that we haven't come across before. All of our stories are rehashed and repetitive in some way, but then we spin it the way we go. And when you're reading somebody else, you can't help but take in the things you like, whether it's vocabulary or tone or technique or anything that you really appreciate, and then adapt it to yourself. And that's the trick, right? Is to put whatever your unique version of it is into the world. And that's, just to answer that question, like, it's very easy to keep your own voice, because let's be honest, at the end of the day, we're all very judgmental when we read, probably. I know I'm super, like, when I read somebody else's work, I'm like, wait, I need to turn off that author part of me that says, well, I would have written, like, shut up and just read the book. But yeah, but you can't help but kind of appreciate even and take it in a little bit, move on from there. As opposed what I actually read, I've fallen behind so much, and I'm so guilty about having not read barely at all last year, which is just sad. But I just finished. I'm part of a writing group, and we're reading each other's novels. So I just read a book called Crow's Shift that no one's ever heard of because it's not published or anything out there, which is kind of neat. I am trying to get through Brent Week's Desert Prince, which I report to say I'm probably going to DNF. I'm just not vibing with that book at all, and I'm not going to go into that here. But what I'm really excited to is the next book I'm going to read is Upgrade by Blake Crouch. I don't know if you folks have ever read his stuff, but oh boy, he's fantastic with that kind of realistic science fiction. Super great. If you need a quick read on your TBR, like if you're feeling guilty, super quick to read through, so you can read a book, feel good, and then tackle something that's 5 billion pages long, like Martin. But yeah, so that's where I'm at right now.
So it's a novella, typically.
Kinda. It's like book length, but it goes so fast that you feel good about it. You're like, all right, I did it. Let's do something else.
So about the voice, I think that as much as the guys have mentioned, we are the products of what we read. Personally, I love Joe Abercrombie's characters. For instance, I enjoy Mark Lawrence's prose, how it is smart and witty and quick. It's that it hits you. And at the same time, I love how detailed George Martin's words are. So I'm not pretending or claiming that I'm as good as the three, but I'm trying doing my best. This is what I like about these characters. So I'm, subconsciously, this is what maybe my voice is the product of the sum of all this. I guess another trick is how to keep your voice or the voice of your characters, consistent when you write multi-POV characters, because this is a real challenge, because you have 2 or 3 characters and they have 3 different personalities, and you have to keep them consistent. I think that's the tricky part, and that's where your notebook or whatever, or your board or whatever you're planning your characters come the role of these things, because you have to remember this guy is supposed to be a shy one, or this one's supposed to be talkative, or so you have to keep your characters consistent. So not all your characters sound like Kareem, because you have characters that sound like Lucy, another like Grigori, another like Mars, another like Catherine. I think this is the real challenge when especially when you write multi-POV fantasy.
By the way, I love the way you say my name, Kareem. It sounds awesome. So just like, yeah.
I hope I got it right.
It sounds cool as hell. Like, I want that to be its normal pronunciation. Sorry, please go ahead.
I think what Karim said about dialogue is really interesting, because I find that in my first draft, I have to then go back and kind of polish those little things that distinguish the dialogue from each character, because on the first one it's kind of all more similar to my voice, and then I have to kind of correct that. Otherwise, if you're old like me, I used to watch all the Buffy, Angel, all those series, and Joss Whedon used to do all of that, even with the Avengers, where all the characters were witty, like they were all Tony Stark, right? They were all doing puns and doing witty things, or kind of like the West Wing, where everyone talked really fast, and so you kind of have that risk of that happening if your author voice is if you're too in love with how witty you are or with how you write dialogue, you may end up with that everyone kind of sounds like the same. So I try to keep that conscious on my first draft, and at least have a couple of characters that have very distinctive ways of speaking, like they hesitate a lot, or they speak with shambled grammar because of their background or whatever. And I try to keep that very, on my mind all the time. And then on the second pass, I kind of try to polish that a little bit. But otherwise, I think that it's not saying if you have like 5 POVs or if you have like 20, like Martin. In that case, it's a little bit more difficult.
Yeah.
You need to keep your voice from becoming the character's voice and vice versa, right? Like being able to distinguish all those levels of complexity with all those different characters. I'll tell you what, if you guys want to get some practice with that, learn to run some tabletop role-playing games. I've been DMing Dungeons and Dragons. I'm a professional DM. That's what I do actually to get paid, because writing doesn't pay any money. But to tell you what, when you need to throw out 15 different NPCs in the course of an hour and a half, you get really good at differentiating characters. It's actually like a weirdly good exercise for writing.
Yeah, totally.
That's a nice angle.
I used to DM 20 years ago or something. I used to DM too, and it also helps when you are creating characters, right? When you have to say, okay, out of this stat sheet, I need to create some, characteristics that make this guy or girl identifiable and kind of, have its own perks. So that's a cool practice.
Yeah.
What's the lesson here? Be a giant nerd.
So we are down to our last few minutes. So we're going to do something that I, as an author, I'm like, this is a struggle, but it's so worth doing. So we're going to do it anyway. We're going to talk about what is coming up in 2024 that readers should watch out for you guys or fellow authors too. We have the links to everybody again in the description box. If you missed that early on, you can just scroll down and follow them there. But we're going to try to keep this to a minute or less. Tell us what's going on in 2024. Kareem, you want to start us off?
Okay, so I had a short story that was in the advent of winter. I was thinking of expanding this world into make a new series about it. It's inspired by Egyptian mythology, borrowing elements from Norse mythology. Of course, there will be battles, a lot of dead bodies and mages and witches and all of the dark stuff that you are supposed to see, and monsters, lots of monsters. So I'm really excited about this project, and I hope all my readers will love it.
Awesome.
Yeah, because as an Egyptian, I thought that I am not doing my duty to write something inspired by Egyptian mythology. So I think it's about time.
Hell yeah. I'll chime in real quick. Honestly, I'll keep it really quick. And I don't know. I'm still waiting on my publisher. We have no idea. So we're trying to see how good the first one is. It came out 2 months ago before they do anything else. So my stuff's a little bit on hold. But if they say yes, I'm going to get that thing written in like 30 days. But so I'm going to actually spend this more going into things that I appreciate, to how I find novels and other things that you can kind of use to find it. We're in a really cool world of reviewers being very accessible, and a lot of them having just these huge amount of resources to get you really cool, interesting books and to get more tips on them. Some of the places that I really appreciate. So if you write these down, guys, because they're amazing. First on, it's Jamreads, jamreads.com. Love Jametti. I probably pronounced that so wrong. I'm sorry, but he's amazing. Dude reads so many books during the year, constantly is putting out reviews and doing what he can for indie authors. Great person, resource to have access to. For if you're on a Discord, the Page Turners Discord is amazing. I think Bo showed up earlier before, the guy who created it and runs it. Great place to find indie books, or any books really, to talk about them, talk to the authors, and be able to get them like on your TBRs or what you should be looking for. Awesome place to hang out. And then, of course, if you haven't heard of Fanfi Addict, you really need to check that out as far as science fiction and fantasy goes. Those are fantastic there as well. You can find so much good stuff and content that doesn't have that traditional marketing budget behind it. So you can really like go out there and see who's coming up with stuff. And I try to use those places as much as possible. So if you're interested in me, you'll definitely find me on there as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's some great recs there. Bo, if you're on and you want to drop a link to the Discord in the chat, I can pull it up. I don't have your Discord readily handy while I'm streaming here, but I did because the others I've seen around the Spiffbo News, the self-published fantasy blog off, and I'm like, oh yes, Fanfi Addict, I know them. Here's their link, plop. Because during Spiffbo, I decided someone needs to do, I think Kareem, you suggested, let's do a weekly thing. And then I was like, is somebody else going to do this? Please, somebody else do this. And when nobody else did it, I was like, okay, I'll do it. I'll take the ring to Mordor.
We have our gratitude.
And you have my axe.
So now I got the list with the quick reference links to like, here's the bloggers. But yeah, Lucy, what's coming up in 2024 for you?
So as I said, I'm querying at the moment, so I'm hopeful I'll secure an agent. I'm working on the second book of my series, but this is actually the ebook is on sale on Amazon at the moment for like $2. So if you fancy starting, a dark fantasy series, you would make me very happy. And yeah, so you can also sign up to my newsletter on my website, which is lucyamclarenauthor.com. And I do about 6 weekly newsletters where I kind of discuss what I'm writing and reading, but also I put in like some counseling theory and how you can use that to understand characters or write characters if you're a writer. So if that sounds interesting to you, do please check it out.
Awesome. And Mars, what are you doing in 2024?
Well, like 10 days, I'm finishing this baby finally, and then I'm probably going to write the novella, and then, or probably I'm gonna write 2, with the option to turn them into series, and I'm gonna probably leave it to the audience or to the sales to determine which one do I follow, because sometimes you say, you're really pumped, I'm gonna do a trilogy, you're going to do 10 books, and and you plan it that way, but then if the response is not that good, you're still locked into doing that. And it's kind of hard. So I thought, I think I have a couple of good ideas. Let's kind of do some beta testing, with the audience. Let's see which one of these novellas do they like best, and then I will turn them into larger series. So that's probably what I'm gonna do, while I keep working like slowly in a couple of big series that I already know that I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a lot of writing across the board this year, it sounds like. And Lucy, you got a question from Alma. Would you say your stuff is similar at all to T. Kingfisher? Cover gives off the same vibe.
I have never read any T. Kingfisher, so I don't know.
No, you should.
Alma, if you read Lucy's stuff, let us know in the comments later. Was it like T. Kingfisher?
And I'll add T. Kingfisher to my mountainous TBR.
100% worth it.
You should say it depends. If you like T. Kingfisher, oh yeah, it's like it,
Perfect fit.
That's also a good way to get a 1-star review. Hey, this wasn't at all what I expected.
I work in sales and marketing, so I can you can tell me about counseling. I can tell you about this stuff.
Deal.
Yeah.
Oh goodness. Yeah. So thank you all so much for hopping on. Alma says they'll let us know. Can you remind us the title one more time, Lucy? And again, for everybody watching, the links are all in the description box too. That's Awakening. Lucy, you're muted.
Sorry, I was just talking there. It's Awakening, the Commune's Curse Book 1 by Lucy A. McLaren.
Google Awakening,
Thank you.
Lucy McLaren.
Yes, if your TBR isn't a mountain in your arm.
You don't have book stacks everywhere in your house that you say you're going to read. Come on, really? Come on. Trip over all the time.
First reader, Bo, come on.
I had a TBR list once and then Spiffa murdered it. I have only scraps left now. But no, seriously, thank you.
It's terrible when you have a list, on your bedside table, but you also have like a TBR on your Kindle or your phone, whatever, and you're kind of going between books, and you read 2 pages from one, 2 pages from the other, and that's kind of what happens to me right now.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for being here. If you're watching, I will be back on in about an hour with our last panel of the New Year's Blitz. We are going to have a good time. There's some historical and time travel fantasy coming, And that's going to round all our panels out. And if you've missed them and you're like, this was fun and I want to meet more indie authors, like the first round of Dark Fantasy, you can go to my playlist on my channel and watch those there. But thank you all so much for joining and watching. Have a happy 2024.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.